Do we have any questions for our speakers? Any observations? Anything that you'd like to contribute about your own particular situation? I'll come to you. If when you ask your question you could precede that with your name and organisation, that will give people an idea of where you're from. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. My name is Naomi Plomp. I'm an HR business partner previously with CTS. A couple of questions, but starting with Jos. I agree that we really need to invest in people and obviously the new generation, but what I also noticed is we speak about generation Y or new generation. I think it started, at least 5 years, maybe 10 years ago already with the high performers. So I think they were kind of the laying ground for the new people. It's great that you invest in training, development, skills, but don't you agree that we also need to invest in that career path, a way to go forth? Because what I noticed, a lot of burnout and a lot of issues that we have in the workplace is actually for people who have all those skills, have all those trainings, and they don't have anywhere to go with them. So basically you give them new hats, new projects, but you don't create a code rack for them to go forth. Shouldn't that be, I don't know, one of the things to also teach in college, but also bring forth to the HR community and to our leadership as well?
Absolutely. I had to make a selection of topics, but one of the things I started with is saying the context is still important. Organizations still have a responsibility, and I fully agree with you. So if all of you invest incredibly in the employability and career competencies of your workers, and then these incentive systems are still organized in very traditional ways. So for example, we spoke to a lot of people from the big consultancy firms, and we see that when I speak to them, they say, I would like to develop, but then at the end of the day, the performance management looks at how many customers I bring in. I only become partner if I sell a lot. So then if you invest in their career competencies and their employability and all these broad skills, that's really nice, but then it only becomes a frustration if your incentive system actually steers you towards a very different direction. And I agree with you that many people say that there are so many burnouts because the new generation is weak. I think it's also because of a major mismatch between the things they want and the things they find. And I think on both sides of the story we need to flip the switches a bit. So maybe they need to be more realistic about how the world of work is, but we should also critically look at how we organize and how we incentivize jobs. Yes, I fully agree. Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Patty Koster from Clinical Research Organization. And I have some questions on, because I came in a bit late, but I didn't see anything on home working people and also about, it's very international, my organization, and there are a lot of line managers managing the people abroad. And I think that's also a big risk for their employee well-being. So anything to add on that or tips?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the presentation I presented first, but I work at Atos. It's an international company in 72 countries. And one of our key elements is flexibility and also working from home, for example, but also we collaborate a lot with employees from other countries. And it's absolutely a challenge to come across with our well-being at work approach, and it's the way you collaborate with each other. Also, what kind of tooling do we have to collaborate abroad? But it's really a key element in well-being at work is social collaboration. So it's all about having the right network and find your way in the organization. I think that's really key to learn. If you work in a matrix international organization to find your way, otherwise you feel really alone at home and doing some calls. But if you don't know who to call, then somehow it stops in your room. You don't have a colleague to go for a coffee or. But I have to say, if you find your way and you have the right tooling and also the guidance from your manager and from your direct colleagues and your team. And what we also have, we have a platform, several platforms, but it's also possible to create networks, and those network groups, we don't plan them to, we don't create them, but employees create them around projects, about interest groups, about certain topics. It could be also about cooking or whatsoever. So you have to make it available for employees to find each other. I think that's really important.
Just a quick message to people. I've noticed a lot of people taking pictures of the slides. Everything will be available to you within a few days. All the video from today, all the slides. So, excellent.
Good morning. My name is Sari Muis from the City of Amsterdam. And I have a question for you, Mr. Akkermans. You talked about interventions that can develop those career competencies. Can you give any tips on what kind of interventions you need to make them successful?
Yeah, I hope I can. So what we did actually is mostly traditional face-to-face training. So with a small group of, let's say, 10 to 15 young people. And one of the key elements of the interventions that we developed was to not be too directive, not be too top-down and say, this is the content, we're going to tell you all about it. But actually to like switch the roles. So to just say, we're the facilitators, you're the experts. And what we found is, especially so the career skills intervention, which I did in my PhD, we originally developed that for MBO people, so intermediate vocational education. And one of the things that still sticks with me today is I did some of those trainings myself, and those people came in, and they were very cynical, very skeptical. Like, another training, I don't feel like doing this. And then because we had this reversal of roles and saying, no, you're the expert, there's no wrong and right here. We only give positive feedback. So it's all about creating this self-efficacy, so to make them, also to give them a boost of self-confidence, basically. And then after one day, you see that this flip switches in their head, so to speak, which is the most awesome moment of the intervention each and every time. And then they look at me and they say, wow, I actually am taken seriously for a change, which I find fascinating, but also quite painful. That people who've been in like an intermediate vocational education for 3 or 4 years feel that this is the first time that they're actually in a role that they can take charge. So there's one of the things that was on my slides is the gap between education and the labor market. We've been trying to close that gap, but we're still not very good at it. And I think that if you have this traditional idea in schools, which would also be bad for training, of telling them how to do stuff, that won't be effective at all. I truly believe in if you want them to be self-managing, if you want them to be proactive, provide the conditions for them to be proactive. So put them in this expert role. Have them lead a discussion, for example, but also make it very clear that there's no wrong answer. So if you, for example, one of the exercises is just step into a time machine, and in 5 years you step out of this time machine. What do you see? Where are you at? Where are you working? What are you doing? And at first they're very cautious because they're afraid of being criticized. So you get like these very cautious answers. Now maybe I want to do this work or that work. And then at one point, if they feel that it's accepted, whatever they say, the most beautiful stories and ideas come out. And I think that's one of the crucial elements of making an intervention effective. Another one is connected to actual work placements. So make sure that I think one of the key problems with interventions is that there's no transfer. So we put them in a classroom for a week, completely outside of their own comfort zone. We train them. Sometimes we even measure it. We say, well, it's effective. And then good luck. And then they go back to their work with their colleagues who were not trained, with their manager who was not trained. And then what we see is the effectiveness goes down like this. So to combine it with either, for example, manager training, so that the manager knows what's happening, a work placement, which we did in Ireland, which was really effective. And what we also did in Ireland is, related to that, is we had workplace mentors. So experienced people on the work floor who knew about the contents. They were trained in the contents of the training, and they were helping those young people during their work placement of 2 weeks. I think that would be crucial.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that because at my time at Deloitte, you talk about the managers, and I think the managers are key. I think because they of course are managing those young workers. At that time, we took them about 500 through a whole Excellence Series course. And the key thing about that course of those managers was to learn themselves, to know themselves, learn about virtual management skills, examples, really do a deep dive in their own competencies, do an MBTI or a Strength Finder or different kinds of tools. There are a lot of tools available. Bring them together in small groups, so you got a lot of learning from each other, and I'm sure that has had an impact on the success of Deloitte has now. But it would be interesting to see, what the effect is of the managers on these young workers in your research.
Absolutely.
What's up with the gentleman here? You've all been very shy, are you?
Hi, my name is Berit Stefan, working for Philips, and I have one question for Erica. I'm wondering, how do you ensure management commitment, in the end, funding for your program, health and well-being? Just showing numbers, KPIs, and get them in, or how do you do it?
It's the most asked question, funding. So in the organization and outside the organization. Yes, management commitment. Let me start with that. It's a good thing. It's in KPIs. So that's, I think, the start of that the top management internationally says, okay, this is a top program.
And what are the KPIs then? Satisfaction?
Yes, for example, the Great Place to Work survey results. The diversity, the amount of women, so those are really measured. But if you look into the countries and on GBU level, we are more going in depth in the divisions and defining together with the management in the divisions what they see as needed to change, because we see quite different difference in each division. So for example, our consultancy division is really a different group of employees as our IDM. It's more a technical group of employees. So it's so diverse, and they have their own challenges. So we have different KPIs, and we just decide together what we find important to focus on.
KPIs.
The overarching is the Great Place to Work survey, and that's the main measure moment. Okay. And if you look into funding, you see that if you have a good plan, there's funding. That's our way of working. If in the countries it's funded via the HR budget, in some countries there's more funding, and in other countries also depending on size. And in the GBU, we have a budget to do bigger projects like we have every year a Wellbeing at Work Week and so on. So yeah, so it's good to, and what also it's, I think when you align the Wellbeing at Work program with, for example, HR or with the divisions, and find out what they want to achieve, what their objectives are, and you're supporting Wellbeing at Work with their objectives, it's not really, it's easier to find the funding for Wellbeing at Work, I think. If you just be if Wellbeing at Work is a standalone program, then it's harder.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. My name is Frauke Maas, work on HR strategy and innovation at AWAS. And a question for Erica, maybe also in addition to what you were saying. Curious, you present a very solid programmatic approach to creating well-being at Atos, linking that to the five global developments in the world of work. And I'm very curious to know what within Atos were concrete indications that you needed something like this.
To start with, the Great Place to Work survey outcome is quite bad. So it's an indicator that we have a way to go. So a couple of years ago, first of all, it was already one of the top three. The other top programs are about cost and other about revenue increase. And well-being is the human factor. But what you see is that Atos has grown to a 100,000 employee company. And we've grown by buying other organizations. So we have a lot of different cultures and also employees who are feeling like, okay, yeah, they took over our company, now I have to be fitting into Atos. And we did it in a really fast way. So you can imagine that people just come in and think, oh no, I'm unified, no, I'm Boo, and everybody has to collaborate with each other. So if you look in the sense of need for well-being comes from that part to have respect for everybody's heritage, but also have respect for Atos as a company and who are we, and that's the main I think trigger. That's well-being at work, and our employees are really important. And also on top of that, our business model in a lot of divisions is our employees are working at our clients, so we need them to in our business model. So it's also in that way a sense of urgency.
Hi, thanks for your keynotes. My name is Annemiek Gouwens, up till recently HR Director at Danone. My question is perhaps first for you, Erica, but also interested in Job's and Jos's view. And it's about empowerment, but also to part of your presentation on mapping out behaviors. And I think most of us work in organizations where we make it quite an industry to spell out to quite some level of detail how people should behave. At the same time, we know, and I'm sure Jos is familiar with this, there's a lot of research about strategic alignment and competitive advantage being in discretionary behaviors rather than in behaviors that you're able to spell out. And if you are able to spell them out, I'm sure the competition is quite able to do exactly the same. So I would be interested to hear to what extent is that paradox being discussed in the program when it came about?
Maybe it's good for you to answer something about the behavior aspect.
Well, I can only say I agree with you. There is a lot of research that says that organizational citizenship behaviors or extra role performance are the key actually to gaining that competitive advantage, because exactly as you say, everyone can spell out the criteria for performance, but the key is to get employees to go the extra mile. And I think the getting them engaged has become a very important KPI for many organizations, because if people are engaged, then by definition, they start running faster, they start doing more work, and if they thoroughly enjoy their job, the chances of them doing extra things, for example, through job crafting, doing extra projects, means that they can do those extra role behaviors that it's not in their contract, but they do it because they want to. And I think, so work engagement is an important way, giving, but mainly a lot of job resources. And I think this afternoon's speaker, Wilmar Schauffele, he's actually an expert on job demands resources theory, on work engagement. He'll probably say a bit more about this. I know him quite well, so I expect him to talk about this, but especially job resources are important. So having autonomy, having opportunities to develop within your organization, getting good performance feedback, those kinds of things. So resources in the job and resources in the person. Be proactive, for example. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Those are very strong predictors of people going the extra mile. So from a scientific perspective, I fully agree with you. Yeah.
If you look into Atos, we are now really working on, for example, DNA. It's all about behavior. And we have something called the employability dialogue. So, and also the individual development plan. And it's quite linked to each other. And it's more about the dialogue the employees have with their manager. To find out what's the passion and what's the ambition of the employee, and also to find out if the behavior is linked to that, or if there's training needed, etc. So it's definitely in the program to be more in dialogue with the manager. As you already said, it's not about the manager telling the employee, but it's listening to the employee and facilitating the employee in their career.
Yeah, to add to that, from a board dynamics perspective, I think behavior starts at the top. And you see actually a lack of investment in the last years, I would say, on the top. So interesting in this program, the Frank Lee Covey Institute also this is the last session in this program where the leaders and the non-executive directors are talking about behavior in the board. You see actually more empowerment in the board, also to do more deep dives into the organization. So you see non-executive directors coming into the organization, being, I think, much more from an HR perspective, looking at leaders on their behavior if it fits, the strategy of the organization. So. I think it's a good development that we are really looking at the top, because the bottom is a key point, but it starts at the top, and too much bad things have been happening there in the past.
Any more questions at all? I've a question for all three of our speakers. Which is the one element of work-life balance, well-being, you personally yet to master? Which thing do you really like to do more about yourself? And as a lesson for HR people, what they should be thinking about their own personal well-being?
Yeah, let me kick off with that. I think I think the comparison with young workers or us in key roles is the comparison with top sports. And if you look at top sports people, they don't do it on their own. There's a tendency, I think, for us to do things on their own. So I think the whole concept of coaching, finding support, building networks, connecting to other networks, get outside in, I think is a key element for your development, and I think will help, also to soften the blow if you come in a burnout situation or in a crisis situation, because life is not easy, and we're all gonna have tough times. We all have sufferings at some age, but to be able to build much stronger networks and connect, I think is a thing which I'm always investing in.
For me, the topic Jos called career crafting. I was always thinking the ladder is just this vertical, go up, and now I'm more in a point of my career, just follow your passion, and that led to the fact that I always was in marketing and communication, and I had a clear point of view of where to be in 5 years, 2 years. I was always aiming to the right objective, for me the right objective. And then suddenly something changed in the office, and I thought, okay, it doesn't feel right at this moment. It's always my first love, marketing communications, but I have to say, stepping out of that discipline, and I've always been involved in well-being at work through the years, so I know the program really well, but it's opened up my own talents and also my passion to connect literally people. So if I see a position in the organization, I think, maybe this employee suits, but she didn't had the right resume. Now she's going for that job. It's so great to do that, to just facilitate an individual, but also facilitate a whole organization with sometimes small things, and sometimes it's invisible because you just have a conversation with somebody in the board and you see the click in their minds and you see a change in the presentation, and sometimes there are small steps, but I think with small steps and bigger programs combined and bigger projects, we go forward and we go forward. So it's something, that's the way, the fact that you can craft your career, for me personally, but I also within employees, I think it's really nice to know you're not stuck in one role or one boundary, or so that's my takeaway. That's really important to give people freedom and flexibility.
I would say that my personal challenge, which is still a challenge, is that there can also be maybe too much passion or too much productivity. And I just, maybe I have too much passion, but I like to do a lot of things. And then always there's an interesting new project popping up. And then at one point I think, so how am I going to manage with all these projects? Thankfully, I haven't burned out yet, so that's a good sign. But I think for a lot of young professionals, that's also an important learning point, is to know which projects to accept and which ones to reject, because there will always be. I think there's this idea of having to prove yourself early on in your career and seeing all these opportunities and all these interesting projects, and you tend to both for intrinsic purposes because you like it and for extrinsic purposes because, well, you want to prove yourself, just come on with those projects, extra project, extra project, extra project, extra project. And then there is maybe a point where you should say, let's first wrap up some projects before I start a new one. And that has been, I think I'm getting better at it, but it has been a major challenge for me, and I think for many young people, to find that balance between having a lot of passion, being proactive, finding all these interesting things to do, but also setting your limits and knowing when to say no.